Hi everyone, and thank you to all who have joined us for the webinar on conversations about emotional health for people living with type 2 diabetes. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Kulin Nations where we are speaking from today, as well as all the lands across Australia, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people watching today. My name is Christina and I've been working with Diabetes Victoria for over 6 years in the area of events, webinars and peer support for people living with type 1 and type 2 diabetes across our state. We welcome all who have joined us for the webinar live tonight, and we hope that you find the discussions helpful during this time. You can ask questions at any time during the webinar, and our speakers will do their best to answer your questions during the time allocated at the end of their discussions. Please note that this webinar will discuss emotional health and well-being. So if you have any questions about your diabetes management, we recommend that you speak with your health professional team, or you can contact us on the NDSS helpline on 1800 637 700 from 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m, Monday to Friday, and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. These are extended hours due to the current pandemic, and you can ask to speak with a diabetes nurse educator, dietitian, or a member of our advocacy team. To find more information about the National Diabetes Services Scheme, information on diabetes management, and other services provided by the NDSS, please visit the NDSS website at ndss.com.au. The Diabetes Victoria website is also a great place to find information about our upcoming webinars, diabetes management, and the programs, services, and peer support available to people living throughout Victoria. You can also find out more information about the extra benefits of becoming a Diabetes Victoria member. We are pleased to be joined by our speakers today who will share conversations about emotional health and type 2 diabetes. Suzanne Baxendale is the Consumer Advocacy Coordinator at Diabetes Victoria and a social worker with 19 years experience working alongside people with diabetes. Suzanne will be joined by Judy and Alan, who will share their experiences living with type 2 diabetes. We are also joined by Zara Zainal, who is a graphic recorder and will draw key concepts from today's conversations. You can see a little preview of Zara and her work in the camera view. Zara will share her illustrations at the end of the webinar, and you will receive these illustrations in an email along with a recording of this webinar in the next 2 weeks. I will now pass it over to Suzanne, and a very big thank you to all the speakers for their time today.
Hello and welcome, and thank you, Christina. We know that stories are a very powerful way for all of us to learn. This evening we're going to have 2 lived experience experts who are very generously going to tell us a little bit about their journey with type 2 diabetes, but also look at what sort of things have challenged them in regards to their emotional health along that journey. Not only what has helped, but who has helped, and then for them to offer us some tips about how they've managed their type 2 diabetes and emotional health, keeping well during this time of COVID-19. Now, before we begin, could I ask those who are viewing this evening if they could raise their hand if they think emotional health is an important factor in regards to type 2 diabetes? Gee, those numbers are rising. They're going yes. I think we're speaking to people who consider emotional health, mental health and well-being an important component. Now, before we begin, I'd also like to ask you to do a little something for me. Could you please just take a mental note of the sorts of things that you currently do in your day-to-day life to keep emotionally well and strong? Keep that to yourself and we'll come back to it just a little bit later. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce Judy. Judy is a community volunteer based here in Victoria. Good evening, Judy. How are things with
Hi,
you?
Suzanne. Yes, how's things?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks, Judy. Now, Judy, without further ado, can we get into asking you a little bit about how you first came to be a person living with type 2 diabetes with several overlapping and additional health conditions?
Yes, well, I went to the doctor because I've got a lot of aches and pains. I've got arthritis, I've got rheumatoid arthritis, I've got so many different overlapping sort of diseases and conditions. But I knew on top of all that and all the pills and potions I was taking that I was still unwell. There was something else going on, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I went to the doctor and he didn't seem to know. So I asked for blood tests and he did. And then we went and did the sugar test and so to speak. And yes, came back that I had diabetes. Well, once I saw him again, he just sort of said, fine, go and see the nurse now. And that was it. That was my sort of magical tour of what diabetes was about, because the nurse was lovely, but, you know, they pointed out all the negative aspects, you know, like amputated toes and, you know, a finger or something missing and strokes and heart attacks. There was no positivity whatsoever. So, yes, I decided to have to learn, do my own thing as I usually do, and start the journey sort of thing, looking for what I could do to help myself. Because
Judy,
I believed at that point, if you don't help
Mm.
yourself, nobody else will. And so that's how I tackled it.
And Judy, could I ask you, now that we know you just a little bit better, what it was like emotionally to hear the news about having type 2 diabetes? That's going back a few years now, isn't it?
Yes,
Would you
yes.
tell us how long
So
that?
I've had it since that I'm aware of since June 99. So I'm over the 20-year sort of time span now. So
Wow.
I've learnt a lot in the process, but
Mm.
it's one of those things you sort of think you know a bit, and then you discover there's so much more you don't know. Then you learn more, and so you think you're on top of the situation. Then you realise you still don't know enough. So it's a forever learning type situation.
Mm.
Sorry,
And
did I answer your question?
you certainly did, Judy. Can I ask whereabouts you sought information to learn more about type 2 diabetes?
Yes, I went through Diabetes Victoria because at that time the nurse was very helpful, and she signed me up,
Mm.
insured me to go on to Vic Roads, make sure I registered with them that I had diabetes, or else, you know, you can lose your license and insurance problems and so on. Then she had the forms to the NDSS, and I chased up Diabetes Australia Victoria then and registered myself. So. But if it wasn't for that nurse, I wouldn't have known about NDSS, things like that. So in that regard, she was helpful, but everything else was so negative.
Mm.
So yeah, so with the emotional health sort of stuff, I realised that I was getting too depressed. I knew nobody that had diabetes. Nobody, you know, I mean, I had an auntie in Queensland, but we sort of accepted why she had diabetes. It was a common sort of situation for that mature age, but I didn't think I fitted in the category of mature even, let alone, you know. So, yeah, so I didn't know anyone. If I knew somebody I could bounce things off, that would be fine, but I didn't. So it was shock. It was horrifying,
Mm.
terrifying, just unbelievable. You know, there's no light at the end of the tunnel sort of stuff.
Mm. And
So,
who at that time, Judy, has, and as the journey over 20 years has gone on, who has helped you address both physical health and emotional health concerns?
so my current GP, I went out and
Mm.
interviewed a few GPs because I want to know who knew something about my situation. And so that's all right. The current GP John, he's excellent. We have a good working relationship. But at that one stage where I felt like I was starting to lose the plot, or I was genuinely worried because I had so many overlapping issues. Will I be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life? And will I get a toe amputated? All these, you know, overlapping sort of problems. I couldn't see light at the end of the tunnel. So that's when I asked the GP John if I could be referred to a psychiatrist, because I thought he was the one that was going to solve all my problems. But
Mm.
in reality, he didn't actually solve too many. You know, it's very expensive. You've only got your 20 minutes in there, not long enough to discuss in full. So I worked as a volunteer with DPV, you know, well, anyway, community health. And so because the staff were allowed to see, as part of their learning and so on, they were allowed to see counsellors and so on through staff were allowed to. So then they introduced that volunteers could do it too. So so a psychologist and a community counsellor sort of person, I was more successful with that, more relieved, less stress getting there, because the psychiatrist had to worry about traffic, had to worry about parking, had to pay for parking. If not, it was taxis and all that sort of stuff. So in reality, it sent the blood sugars up from going to see the psychiatrist because of all these other stresses to get there. And then on top of that, you still had to get home, and it was so expensive that I didn't actually get a great deal of satisfaction. So I'll stick with the community therapy sort of thing for me.
And Judy, I've got the impression that GP John has been a great support. Is he someone that makes you feel comfortable and is open to talking about emotional health worries?
Yes. So I always go in with my list of 10 complaints or problems or issues, whatever the case may be. And so he works through them and then always asks, is there anything else you can help with, or is anything else troubling me or worrying me? So go ahead to open up and discuss anything else that still might be troubling me, even after we've ticked off the 10 things on the list, because it could be just pills and potions and other things that are required, forms and so on. But yes, so he's very open, very easy to talk about things with. He knows that I want to know as much information as possible, so he delivers what I ask. And
oh, fantastic. It seems like you've got developed a really good working relationship over the years where you can discuss things that are a worry to you. Would that be a fair summation of Dr. John?
Yes. So he's lasted over 10 years now, so no other doctor lasted anywhere near that long. They couldn't cope with me. Yeah. I had 10 problems. I only wanted to deal with 3 at a time. The time I come back next time I had 13 problems, you know. So no, they couldn't cope with me. So the fact that he does, and he can, and he still does after this period of time, yes, it's a very good situation.
Yeah, it seems like a workable,
very workable
partnership, both for your physical health and your emotional health.
Yes, very much so.
And Judy, thinking about COVID-19, would you like to comment on what sort of things you've been doing at the moment or in recent months to keep emotionally strong and well?
Well, because I haven't been particularly well health-wise anyway, with, you know, sort of crook back syndrome, I'll say. So it's limited the amount of exercise that I can do. So blood sugar's a little bit raised from lack of exercise. I'm never bored. I can always read a book. I've got my sewing. Now that I'm getting technologically smart, I've got a Zoom meeting with our sewing ladies. So, you know, in that way, I can get to people, talk to anyone that I need to. But in reality, I've sort of stayed looking after myself. I feel a bit selfish that I haven't reached out to many people to sort of say, you know, I am here if you want help, because I felt that it was more important to look after myself, which, you know, from an outside perspective, I feel that I've been selfish, but in the other way, I've been able to fiddle around and do what I want to do when I want to do it and at my pace and so on. So, yeah, I've been, you know, really quite happy with the situation.
Yeah. So
doctors, pharmacist, and that's sort of the to and where and as far as I've been, you know.
It sounds as if you've had the opportunity, maybe for the first time for a little while, given all your community work, to put your own health needs front and centre. Would that be a fair comment?
I think that would be fair. Yes, I think that would be very fair. Thanks.
When you mentioned that you've taken the opportunity to learn a few new things during this pandemic, what sort of things have they been?
Well, some people would be shocked, but it wasn't that long ago that I had a telephone, a mobile phone with big numbers and that, and I graduated to an iPhone, and now I'm doing things on Zoom and webinars. I mean to say that's a real incremental leap for me, I can assure you. So, but now I've got an interest in technology now. So now that I've gained a bit of an interest, I'll follow through a bit more now and enjoy it, you know.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
prior to that, but sewing masks and things like that, you know, you can sort of potter along at your own pace, and all those little things that are in the to-do basket that you don't quite get around to doing, you know. We've all cleaned out our wardrobes. We've all done that. So the op shops won't know what to do with themselves when, you know, all the stuff lands in there. But yes, you know, things like that that never really get to happen. It's been kept me occupied and entertained.
Judy, in thinking of the sorts of messages and tips as someone with long-standing type 2 diabetes and overlapping health conditions, what sort of tips would you offer people about emotional health and the going forward in the next few months as we come through and
Well, I think you have to nourish your soul. That's how I sort of afterwards, you know, now that I'm putting it into words, you have to look after your own entity, your soul sort of stuff. So whatever it does that you need it to do, whether it's, you know, reading up books to make yourself feel better or to lose yourself, whether it's looking at the flowers, you know, my cyclamens are in flowers, they're bright pops of colour around the place, and but whatever it is that makes you feel better about yourself, or just ticking things off the list that didn't get ticked off for a few years is very satisfying. So gardening, well, that's a bit hard to actually accomplish at the moment with our weather and so on. I've got a raised garden bed, but, you know, even in this weather, I'm not planting anything just yet, waiting for another couple of weeks. But yeah, there's so many things to do. If you put your mind to it, it's sort of like a resilience thing whereby you've got to look after yourself, because if you get bored, you get depressed, and we know that diabetes tends to make one depressed for no apparent reason sometimes. So we've got to find ways of keeping distraction therapy in the fore, where we can do all that sort of stuff.
Judy, has humour played a role in your journey with type 2 diabetes?
Well, I've got a warped sense of humour. It's a coping strategy that I've employed over the years. So I try and see the glass as half full rather than being half empty. So I've learned a lot of positive thinking and how to change negatives into a positive and that sort of thing, so that even if things look bad, that you can still twist it around, turn it into something positive, that you can look after your own mental well-being. And if not, recognise that you need help and do something about it. So we all get to a point, I think, where you know you need help. Well, most people do recognise it, but sometimes people don't recognise it, and that's when you really can get really down. And then, of course, all the stress of that, your blood sugar goes up again anyway. So you might as well look after yourself in the first place, you know.
Wise words, Judy. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Oh, just a couple of tips that I had was with regard to actually finger prick testing, to actually use the sides of your fingers. Now, nobody taught me this. I found out through trial and error over the years that I feel that when I use the pads of my fingers, because of neurological issues with the fingers, because of long-term diabetes and other neurological problems, the finger pads are very red and very sore without doing too much. So if you prick the sides, doesn't hurt as much, they heal faster and all that sort of stuff. So if you're doing a lot of finger pricking, it's easy enough to deal with. Be guided by your own body sensations, like do your own biofeedback. Sort of like you had that piece of cheesecake, you feel guilty, you shouldn't have eaten it, but how much did it really affect me? You know, sort of being aware of what your brain cells are trying to tell you, how much sugar was in it, being aware in that way. That's what I call biofeedback. If you're unwell, to check your blood glucose levels more often, because often the stress of being sick puts everything up and out of kilter. be your own diabetes complications checker. So be aware of your sore toes and things like that as an indicator of what's going on in your body. Get your doctor to put you down for 12 monthly checks with your diabetes nurse, endocrinologist, neurologist, whatever, eye specialist, particularly the ophthalmologist, because they need to look in the back of your eyes to catch any small bleeds or things like that. And because the eyes are the window to the soul. So yeah, that's most important, because you are the manager of your own health. So you can manage it by doing nothing, but still a management style, or you can manage it by being proactive and do something positive. So yeah, I think, have I done enough talking?
Judy, thank you very, very much. You've definitely got your finger on looking after your emotional health, putting yourself first, along with some help from Dr. John, and I suspect many, many reference books and articles in peer-reviewed journals, and peers have played a role thus far in your 20 years with type 2 diabetes.
Yes.
And on behalf of all the participants this evening viewing, thank you very much for generously sharing your journey thus far.
Thank you.
We're just going to say, please will you come back when we come to question times, because we're going to meet another person with lived experience. Judy, cheers for now.
Yes, thanks, Suzanne. Thanks. Bye.
Now it's over to introduce people to Alan.
Good evening.
Good evening, Alan. How are things with you?
Yeah, very good. A bit chilly in Melbourne, in our little Melbourne prison.
It is indeed. Now, everybody, can I introduce you to Alan? And Alan is a broadcaster and coming up to, is it 3 years with type 2 diabetes, Alan? Have I got that correct?
Absolutely correct. I think I'm about 2 weeks away from my anniversary.
Okay. Would you be able to share with us a little bit about how you came to find out that you have type 2 diabetes and what the emotional impact of that has been?
Okay, so I suppose I'll start with a bit of family history. My mum and all her brothers have had diabetes and had all passed from diabetes related illnesses, and as probably 2 years ago, my mum passed from pancreatic cancer, and she had diabetes all the years. So I knew that there would be a time, sometime, that I would need to face up with diabetes, and over the years I've tried to sort of stay on top of it. But about 3 years ago, or just over 3 years ago, I noticed that I started going to the bathroom more and more and more, and urinating, nearly on an hourly basis. And one of those days I was down at the airport and I needed to run to the toilet. And in the toilet, there was these little screens above the urinal, and they show these videos. And there was this video about don't be a disappearing Dave. And the particular video was related to prostate cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And this made me, it sort of alarmed me a little bit. And I ran off to my GP and told him what was going on. And he said, look, let's just do a couple of tests, and spoke to me and he said, look, I think let's do a prostate exam. And we did the prostate exam, and he wasn't too concerned about that. But then while I was there, he said, let's just do a urine test while you're here. And off I did do urine test. And when he had a look at it, he was a bit alarmed because the little stick that he put into it went all the way across to the brown area, which was the furthest marker he could find, or that was on the stick. And he said that this is indicating that I've got very high blood glucose, and recommended I get blood tests. And so off I went, got the blood test done, and the next day I got a call from my GP, which was very unusual. he called me. He said, "Look, I've got the results of your blood test. You need to come in now." And I was a bit alarmed, just and quite anxious going to the doctor. He wanted to see me, which was unusual. Normally, it's make an appointment to come and see me, but this was, you need to see me now. And anyway, I went in there and found that my blood glucose levels were 27.5, which was apparently quite high. And he explained to me what that meant, and that how I was sort of teetering on being around at that sort of level. Well, of course, I've got a very strong way of looking at things, and I thought, here's another one of those things that I'll beat it. I managed to get on top of cholesterol probably about 18 years ago or 17 years ago, and changed my diet and managed to get my blood glucose levels down to a manageable level and without any medication. So I was really, really happy, and I thought, diabetes, here's my next challenge. I'm going to knock this. My GP said to me, "No, Alan, this is going to be with you. This is a chronic disease, and it's going to be with you for the rest of your life. So you're going to need to make some adjustments." And I really did have this idea that I needed to make some adjustments. So, look, because I thought, what you put in is what you get out. And make the correct food choices, bit more exercise, and you'll be on top of it. But this wasn't to be.
And Alan, how does it make you feel? You mentioned the anxiety of the doctor saying, "Please come. I want to see you straight away." When you heard of type 2, what was the emotional impact of hearing that? What sort of things did you muster within you and externally to get you through that first hearing and to now?
I thought that drawing on inner strength was important for me, and there was some external help that I had as well. The external help being my GP, who knew me, and we had a good relationship, and he knew what it was like. So he knew that I'm going to do what I need to do to sort this out. And, I think after 2 months, I went for a blood test, and I was from 27.5 down to about 12. And after another 2 months, I was down to about 9. And it was just getting, and I've been able to keep it away for quite a while. Another thing that I thought was really, really helpful was that my GP realized that I needed a care plan.
Yes.
A proper care plan, things that I hadn't taken into consideration, like a podiatrist, optician, dietitian, and my diabetes educator. So went through all of that, and I think that the most help I got with dealing with it from an emotional point of view was with my diabetes educator. She suggested I do a course that she does, just a community course, and it was for 4 weeks, 1 day. 4 months. Sorry, that's right. 4 months, 1 Sunday each month.
Yes.
And, it was for 2 hours, and it went through a number of different things. So the first one was what diabetes means and what it means to others around you.
Yes.
What was required from an exercise point of view? What was required from a dietary point of view? And then also what was required from a mental and emotional point of view. So that was really, really helpful, and being able to network with people that also had diabetes and was also dealing with these things.
So Alan, there were other people in the course with you. Yes.
Yes. So she works at a number of different locations, medical centres, and suggests this to all her newbie diabetes patients. And well, there we were, doing this course together and just discussing, I found doing this works for me, and tried this, and does this work? And so it was a really great forum to be around in order to discuss these things. And I think that being around a network of people that you can discuss on a similar, experiencing the similar situation.
And Alan, can I ask, have there been any challenges for your emotional health in your almost 3 years journey?
Yes. Well, I think my largest one of all was my GP decided to take a sabbatical.
Oh. Oh.
Well, it wasn't very thoughtful of him, but it's one of those things. And this put me at a point where I needed to find a GP that would be able to, that I could work with, that would understand what I'm like, know that it's not, don't just tell me to take a pill and think that's where it'll end. I'm very strong. I believe that I can do anything that I want to, and if I need to be on top of it, I will. And, so going through that process, the first doctor I came across was okay, but he wasn't even interested in looking at my care plan and renewing that. And it didn't instill very much confidence in me. And then I went to go and find another GP and found somebody I could work with. And it's been probably about 6 months now. And we've got a good relationship. I'm on top of things. My care plan's up to date. I feel confident, just knowing that.
You've got someone in your corner. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Just to know that there's my GP. I've got my care plan. I'm on top of things, because I think the worst part of all is knowing that, and being strong for me is knowing that I've got support, because I've got the outlook that we either have this disease or this disease has us. And who's in control? Is the disease in control of how my life is, or am I in control? And I will, deal with diabetes in my way. So, but it's one thing having that positive attitude and that type of thing, but knowing that you've got some professionals in your corner that you can, relate to and fall back on and test and measure as well. Like Judy was saying, try something and see if it works for you, because what works for you might not necessarily work for somebody else, and what works for them might not necessarily work for you. And a good example is that as far as diet is concerned, I love bread. Bread is the greatest thing ever. And I found that part of the diabetes diet was steer clear of bread. And a friend of mine said, look, try this low carb bread. And I tried the low carb bread. It made a slight difference, but it still wasn't what I expected. And I eventually found some bread that works for me, doesn't have an effect on my blood glucose, and yay, I can eat bread again. So really happy about that.
Alan, it sounds like you've enjoyed the journey of being your own diabetes researcher to work out what works for you, to do your own journey. Yeah.
Well, what I did was also use an app called MyFitnessPal.
Yes.
And also run a spreadsheet. So I would do my my blood glucose readings. I'd weigh myself, and I'd run a food diary.
Yes.
And my food diary, let's say today I've eaten what I've eaten, and today I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try a dark no sugar chocolate, just a couple of little pieces, and
Mm.
See what that does for me.
Mm.
I'll test the next day. I'd mark it down in my food diary. I'd mark how many calories it had in it. And if it had a negative effect, I'd go, right, okay, I know what it was. Stop that. That's not good for you. Try something else.
Mm.
And yeah, I think it's a great journey. You get to learn a lot of new things and
Yes.
try different things. And yeah, it might work, it might not work. You never know what is the magical pill that you might need.
Yes. And Alan, could I ask for you to comment on the link between physical health and emotional health from your perspective? Is there a link, and how does it work for you?
Yeah, I think, look, physical health and emotional health plays a big role. I think that being in a state of lethargy, I'd call it, where you're not active, your blood flow is not that great. Whereas when you're out and about, your heart rate's up, your blood flow is flying better. You tend to think clearer when you've got more, oxygenated blood in your body. And look, I'm no medical professional, but this is my personal view. So, going out for a walk is great. But how about going for a shorter walk, but doing it a little bit faster?
Yes.
Do some, what is it called? Where you walk fast and then walk slow. I don't know what the technical term is for
We know what you mean. You walk fast and you walk slow.
walking, I think it's called. And so you walk really, really fast for between one power pole and the next one you take it easy, and then you walk up again, and it raises your heart rate and all that kind of thing, and you just feel so much better. The other thing is also that I've found is that, especially now during this COVID time, where we're spending a lot more time at home, and we have the tendency to think, we'll sleep in, we'll get up later, we've got no urgency, there's nothing, nothing that can't be done later. My way of looking at it is, so maybe sleep in 15, 20 minutes, but get up, show up, and, get up, dress up, and show up. Just be there.
Yeah.
Life will present itself to you.
Yes. And Alan, during any tips for things that you have learned and enjoyed doing to boost your emotional health during the time of COVID-19 here in Victoria?
Look, music is a big part of my life, and I love music and being with people and helping people. And I think that with my music program, I do 3 radio programs a week now, and this week I'll be doing 4. But being able to share the joy of music with people is a big part of my personal well-being, because I'm sharing joy, that what brings me joy, and hopefully shares joy with others. And it keeps me connected and just wanting to do more, and most of all, being aware and thankful of the fact that I have those things to look at.
Yes.
If you've got an attitude of gratitude to your life at the moment, because things could be worse, and let's just be thankful for what we've got and embrace that. We've all got something to share.
Yes.
And during COVID, it might be hard, but if you can't share it right now, write it down so you can add it up and share it with people when you can.
Yes, I suspect there'll be much sharing, bouncing out.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Alan, is there anything more that you would like to share with people in the webinar this evening?
Look, I believe that, like I said earlier, you either have diabetes or diabetes has you. So that is the attitude to look at it. diabetes doesn't define who you are.
Mm. Mm.
You're just a person with diabetes.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes, I
And,
suspect you've got a lot of nodding heads all around the people who are listening. I can see Judy's head's nodding and mine's nodding, but I suspect there's a few more.
things could be a lot worse, and obviously there are, people that are
Mm.
facing really, really tough times, but diabetes is just one of those things.
Mm.
And we can raise ourselves up above that
Mm.
because it's a condition, it's not a way of being.
Mm. Alan, on those wise words, thank you very much. Now, Judy and Alan, are you ready for some questions from our webinar participants? I'm just about to see some of your questions
Absolutely.
here.
Ready when you are. Yes.
Here we go, folks. May I ask either of you, have you faced any new challenges in working from home with diabetes? Do you think you've felt more emotional? Alan and Judy? Mm.
Alan, you go first. You work, I don't.
Look, I will find, I do think that it's not only diabetes that raises our emotional awareness during this lockdown, because when we don't have control of what we normally do, there's a bit of despair that comes in.
Mm.
And I think that we all become slightly more emotional during this time, but embrace it.
Mm.
It shows us that we're human.
Mm.
So if you need to shed a tear, that's what we got to do.
Mm. Thank
So-
you, Alan. Thank
Yeah.
you, Alan. Judy, do you have anything more to add? Mm.
Only in so much as everything I'm doing now expands to fill the space available.
Mm.
So whereas before I knew I had 2 hours to sew and I had to get on and do it and get it finished or whatever. Well, now I just potter around doing it at my pace, things like that. But I haven't let it worry me. I've decided I'm still enjoying what I'm doing at that given time. So whether it takes 1 hour or 2 days, does it really matter? As long as I'm still distracted sufficiently so that things don't get me down. That's what it's important to me.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Alan. Now, the next question, have you felt angry about your diagnosis and how have you dealt with those feelings?
Angry, I could have used a punching bag. I was just so mad, frustrated, irritated, aggravated, you name it, because I was left in the dark. Nobody would tell me anything and I didn't know anyone to bounce it off. So I was angry in the fact that maybe I got it from my predecessors, was it my father? Was it my mother? Was it grandparents? That sort of angle. And then you think, well, what the hell? Getting angry, you're only using up wear and tear on your brain cells. Well, I need as many as I can get to keep. So I just gave up the anger bit gracefully. I couldn't see the point in getting myself so worked up that it actually put the blood sugar up. It wasn't worth it to me,
Thank you, Judy. Would you have anything to add, Alan?
Yeah, I think that there might be a bit of confusion between the anger and I think that it might be more frustration than anger, because we could be angry, but we could really be frustrated because we can't do anything about it. And that's when we get to that point where, again, just, hey, this doesn't define me.
No.
Yeah.
Now for the next question, have you spoken about diabetes with your partners and those close to you? In particular, have you spoken to them about any fears and concerns you have for your health?
Yes, definitely. My dear beloved knows quite a bit on the subject these days, and it's not fair because he can eat twice as much volume, twice as much fat, twice as much sugar. And if I stab his finger afterwards, 2 hours later, his blood sugar's lower than mine. So it's just not fair. So, yes, he knows quite a bit on the subject these days, and everything I prepare food-wise, it's catering, as well balanced as I can make it. So he's coping with, there's nothing that's been cut out of the diet or anything like that. We eat as well as we possibly can, bearing in mind, have I had my fruit today? Have I had, that sort of thing. But yeah, my dear beloved knows quite a bit, really.
Thank you very much, Judy. Alan, would you comment on that, please?
Look, with my wife and I, we both have a couple of health issues, and we just talk about it all because we've got to work on it together. And I know that sometimes it could be challenging to make yourself vulnerable to your partner by not being the Superman, especially with men. We want to be strong, we want to be invincible, but and make ourselves vulnerable to our partner by saying, look, maybe I can't do this, and maybe I can't do that, and maybe I have to be a bit girly and use a bit of moisturize on my feet every day, and all of that kind of thing, But don't worry about it. It's only a little thing to do, and if it's going to keep you healthy, great. And if your partner knows about it, there's a bit of conscience that comes in. The cop in your head can be your partner saying, "Did you take your meds? And have you done this? And have you done that?" So yeah, why not?
So it sounds like it's important to have people in your corner,
Definitely.
who are close to you. Yeah. Now, the next question I have, do you have any advice on the feelings when you get a blood glucose level that you weren't quite hoping for?
Under your breath, you say sugar plum fairies, and then you try and work out why. Why did it turn out like so? And then you figure out, well, it was after Christmas or it was after Easter. I did eat all those chocolate Easter eggs, I mean, the kids are good. They give us dark chocolate. That's all the one we eat. So that's better than. But yes, as long as you can rationalise it to suit yourself, that you know what it's come from, its cause and effect. So you can put in its little box and say, that's it, now I've got to look out what I'm doing. Yeah. But if you don't know the cause, well, that's time for the GP or the endocrinologist or the nurse educators or whoever to get in touch with to find out.
Thank you, Judy. Any comment from you, Alan, about the readings?
Most of the time we would be, I suppose it's being a bit naughty, but we know that it's something that we had we shouldn't have had. And 9 times out of 10, we know beforehand, we're expecting that number to be up. Maybe not as much as it would be up, or down for that matter. But we've got a good idea, and I think that keeping a food diary is a great way to isolate what the cause of it was.
A person has asked about what would be your views about consulting an endocrinologist, so the medical specialist in diabetes.
I wouldn't be able to answer that because I haven't, but Judy, I think you might be able to.
Yes, I only saw one. This was maybe 10 years after I'd had diabetes. But apart from 500 blood tests, I didn't really find out anything more than I already knew. Like if I was newly diagnosed, that might be different, that they'd take ample blood supplies to check different angles and that. But because I'd already been just getting blood tests done, because I'd turn up at Dr. A and sort of say, well, I've got diabetes, I think I need a blood test. And Dr. A would sort of say, oh, yeah, okay, if that's what you think, and send me down to the blood place. But because I saw the endocrinologist at the hospital, they're all busy. They're all got lots of clients on their list. And it was the number of blood tests that she took to try and resolve things. But really and truly, no, I'll stick with what I know now and who I know and deal with it that way.
Yes.
Mm.
Somebody has asked for the name of community programs to learn more about diabetes. Judy, would you like to comment on where?
Right. Well, our own, with here in Craigieburn, because I'm in Craigieburn, we do have a diabetes support group, but we're not meeting at the moment because of COVID-19 and, you know, the age of most members, the comorbidities and those sort of things. We can't put people under pressure. And the fact that Hume City Council sort of said no, 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 and no, you can't meet in those sort of situations. So there's a local community aspect, then there's the community health situations. Dianella and Plenty Valley Health, DPV, they have diabetes programs. There's still the supermarket tours going on. They might be stopped at the moment, but yes, they do supermarket tours where you go along, just nominate that you're going, and they show you all different things that you don't know, how to read the packaging and things like that, you know, to look for fats, saturated versus the rest of the carbohydrates, the rest of the fats, and what to look for, which biscuits are better than those ones, and etc. So those sort of things are still in the offering. But generally, there's other community things that go on, but you know, I keep an eye just in the local newspaper and that sort of thing to find out other things.
Thank you very much, Judy and Alan, and I'd encourage people to look at Diabetes Victoria website. We're trying to do as many things online as we possibly can within your own community. In closing, for the last question, do you have, somebody has said here that they feel their stress and anxiety has increased during COVID-19. Would you have any tips for people, last words for people in the webinar tonight?
You can run it up and down on the spot if you've got the time, the energy and the inclination. The inclination might be missing, so in that case you do something along the way. So you go out to the clothesline, oh it's raining, you come back inside, you walk around the kitchen 3 times and sit down. You watch TV, you know you shouldn't, you know, it's not wise to be sitting watching TV. So every ad, get up on every ad and do some quick exercise, like what Alan was saying, short, slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, that sort of thing on every ad. And then when you add it up, you've done your exercise for the day, those sort of things. But yes, it's can be very disconcerting if you haven't got enough things to occupy your mind.
Alan, any final comments about reducing stress and anxiety during COVID-19 from your perspective?
I think what I would do is, it's probably a little bit crazy, but you know, be aware of those feelings, write them down. So take it away, take it out of this area and put it down on paper or put it onto your computer somewhere. Just write it down and take it away, because once it's gone, it's gone. You don't have to think about it. And then maybe go and take a walk. You're clear, taking it away, you can clear it. And you have the order in which to deal with those stresses. So you can choose that. I would now look at the fact that, I'll be real silly about it, but my lawn is growing crazy and I can't get my gardener around to sort it out. You know, it's maybe a silly stress, but I suppose it might be a stress for some people. Yeah. So write it down, get it away from yourself, take it from your mind, put it on paper and walk away from it.
I agree with Alan, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning. You've woken up, something's on your mind, you have a piece of paper beside the bed, on the bed thingamajig, and a pencil that's sharpened at both ends, so it doesn't matter which way you pick it up, and you write it down at 3 o'clock in the morning. And believe me, you can still read your own scribble when you come back the next morning, but it gets it out of your mind so you can go back to sleep. Like Alan says, you've sort of put it in a little box and it's taken away from you then, and you can relax and go back to sleep. 3 o'clock is a very prime time for me, you know. All those brilliant ideas or whatever come at 3 o'clock in the morning, plus the worries, you know. So yes, that's my way of dealing with it.
I think it's 10 past 3 out east.
You smarty.
Judy and Alan, once again, thank you very, very much. And for the people attending the webinar this evening who put in their very thoughtful questions, and thank you very much, Judy and Alan. One thing I wanted to just leave you with was just the reminder of the National Diabetes Services call line. And Christina mentioned the extended hours. The Australian Centre for Behavioural Research in Diabetes are Australia's leading organisation with the job of looking after mental health and diabetes. They've just celebrated their 10th year and this week. And in addition to information sheets about emotional health and adjusting to life with diabetes, looking at peer support, they've developed 2 new resources during this COVID-19. One of them was adapted from the Welsh Diabetes Organisation in the UK, and it looked particularly at worries and emotional health and gives some very, very practical suggestions to people. The next one is a new one that looks at how we might encourage people who have an emotional health concern or a mental health concern and diabetes, and where and how to go about and what to expect in making an appointment, or indeed talking with Dr. John, in Judy's case, or in Alan's case with his new GP, about emotional health and looking for Medicare funding for emotional health. For any health professionals in the audience, the Australian Centre for Behavioural Research in Diabetes has done a wonderful handbook, and it's about to be an online tool on how to address emotional health and well-being in your day-to-day consultations with people with diabetes, whether you're a podiatrist, a social worker, a counsellor, or a psychologist, how you might strengthen your consultations to embrace emotional health and well-being. The Diabetes Victoria website is again a place to not only see the recordings of webinars, blogs, and links to information. And just over the last couple of days, we've got a whole lot of flip books for people who have additional languages in addition to English on all aspects of managing diabetes. And in those wee hours, when you're sharpening that pencil and you think, oh, I might need to speak to somebody on a helpline, Lifeline is always there. You can talk to somebody, you can text somebody, and you can chat online 24/7 for both Lifeline and Beyond Blue. Both of them have additional hours, additional numbers of people available to talk, to text, and to be available to chat online 24/7 during this COVID-19 times. Now, before we spoke to Judy and to Alan, I asked you just to take a minute to think of some of the things that you currently do to make sure you attend to your emotional health and well-being. Look over the conversations with both Judy and Alan, and I hope that at the end of this webinar this evening that you will have added a few extra things to your repertoire to give a try. We would encourage you to give them a try tomorrow, the next day, and in your days ahead as people living with type 2 diabetes, or indeed supporting people with type 2 diabetes in your life. Christina, I think it's time to say over to you.
A very big thank you, Suzanne, and a very big thank you to Judy and Alan for sharing your experiences with us about living with type 2 diabetes. We've had over 300 people join us for the webinar tonight, and we hope you found the conversations useful during this time. We would now like to reintroduce Zara, our graphic recorder, to share her illustrations. Thank you, Zara.
Hi, everyone. So this is a visual summary of the conversations that we've just had with Judy and Alan. Now, this will be sent out to you in the next 2 weeks by Diabetes Victoria. It contains some key points and strategies and very healthy mindsets that we heard about tonight. Please feel free to keep it, print it out, use it on your diabetes journey, and I wish you the absolute best. Thank you so much.
As mentioned previously, if you have any questions that were unanswered about your diabetes management, we recommend that you speak with your health professional team, or you can contact us on the NDSS helpline on 1800 637 700 from 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. These are extended hours due to the current pandemic, and you can ask to speak with a diabetes nurse educator, a dietitian, or a member of our advocacy team. To find more information about peer support groups and upcoming programs and webinars, please head to our website. As shown on this screen, you can see the dates and topics of the free upcoming webinars, with a session on carbohydrates on the 1st of September, blood glucose monitoring on the 10th of September, healthy food shopping on the 30th of September, and medications on the 8th of October. Registration for these webinars are essential, so please head to diabetesvic.org.au/building-blocks. Thank you for watching this webinar, and we hope you can join us again soon.